The chest pain started during dinner at my parents' house. Not the sharp, dramatic pain from movies, but a spreading pressure that made breathing feel like work. I set down my fork and pressed my hand against my sternum. "You okay?" my brother Mark asked. "I don't know. Something feels wrong." Mom didn't look up from her plate. Here we go again. I'd been having episodes for months, palpitations that felt like my heart was trying to escape my chest, dizziness that came in waves. Each time I mentioned it to my parents, I got the same response: anxiety, stress, attention seeking. At 28, I should have been past needing their validation, but their dismissiveness had made me doubt my own body. "It's different this time," I said. The pressure was building, radiating down my left arm. "I think I need help." Dad sighed heavily. "You always think you need help. Remember last year when you were convinced you had appendicitis? It was gas." "This isn't gas. It's anxiety, Jessica," Mom said. "You've always been dramatic about health issues. Ever since you were a child, every little ache became a production." The room tilted. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. I heard Mark's voice, distant and alarmed, then the floor came up to meet me. "I don't remember losing consciousness. I don't remember Mark calling 911 or the 8 minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive. My next clear memory is lying on the hardwood floor, staring at the ceiling, unable to move, unable to speak, my chest feeling like someone had parked a car on it. I heard the doorbell, heard voices, heard my mother's voice, bright and apologetic, speaking to someone at the front door. "I'm so sorry you came out for this. My daughter has a history of these episodes. She gets anxious and convinces herself something's wrong. We've been through this before." "Ma'am, we received a call about someone losing consciousness," the paramedic said, professional and concerned. Yes, my son panicked. "But she's fine. She does this for attention. Always has. She's very dramatic." I tried to call out, tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. I could hear everything but couldn't make myself heard. "We'd still like to check her vitals," the paramedic said. "That's really not necessary. She's probably already feeling better and embarrassed about the fuss. Trust me, I know my daughter. She just wants attention." There was a pause. I heard footsteps retreating, heard the door start to close. Then Mark's voice, loud and sharp. "She's not moving. She's on the floor and she's not moving." The door opened again. Footsteps rushed into the room. I saw faces above me, felt hands on my wrist, my neck. Heard urgent voices and medical terminology I didn't understand. "No pulse. Starting compressions." The words cut through everything else. No pulse. I was dead. Clinically dead. On my parents' dining room floor while my mother told paramedics I was being dramatic. They used the defibrillator twice. I learned that later, in the hospital, when a cardiologist explained that my heart had stopped due to an undiagnosed condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, an extra electrical pathway in my heart that had been there since birth, waiting for the right combination of stress and circumstance to trigger a fatal arrhythmia. "You're lucky your brother insisted the paramedics come in," Dr. Harrison said. "Another minute and we'd be having a very different conversation." I spent 5 days in the hospital. They performed a catheter ablation to correct the electrical pathway, inserted a temporary pacemaker, and monitored me constantly. My parents visited once, the day after the incident. Mom brought flowers and acted like nothing unusual had happened. "We were so worried," she said, arranging the bouquet on the windowsill. "You told the paramedics I was faking." "I didn't say faking. I said you get anxious," which you do. "I was in cardiac arrest." "We didn't know that." "How were we supposed to know? You've cried wolf before." Dad stood by the door, hands in his pockets, saying nothing, the same position he'd held my entire life. Silent observer to Mom's dismissals, tacit supporter through his refusal to contradict her. "I almost died," I said quietly. "But you didn't. You're fine now. Let's not dwell on it." They left after 20 minutes and didn't come back for the rest of my hospital stay. My grandmother came every day. Grandma Ruth, my father's mother, who'd always had a complicated relationship with my parents. She'd sit beside my bed for hours, reading, knitting, or just being present. We'd always been close, but something shifted during those hospital days. She watched the door every visiting hour, noticed who came and who didn't. "Your parents aren't here again," she observed on day 3. "They're busy." Too busy for their daughter who nearly died? I didn't answer. What was there to say? "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "Mark told me about your mother turning away the ambulance. She didn't know how serious it was. She didn't want to know. There's a difference. Grandma set down her knitting and looked at me directly. I've watched your mother dismiss you your entire life. Every concern, every fear, every accomplishment. Nothing was ever quite real enough for her. I always thought it would change, that she'd see you clearly eventually. But she won't, will she? Probably not. Then other things will have to change instead. I didn't know what she meant. I didn't think about it much during the recovery that followed. I was too focused on relearning my limits, managing new medications, and adjusting to life with a heart condition that would require monitoring forever. I moved into my own apartment 3 months later. Small, affordable, mine. My parents came to see it once, made comments about the neighborhood and the size, and left after an hour. Grandma Ruth visited monthly, brought groceries, helped me organize, stayed for dinner. We never talked about the cardiac arrest incident directly, but it hung between us, a shared understanding of who had shown up and who hadn't. She died 14 months after my hospitalization peacefully in her sleep, at 82. The funeral was well attended, the service lovely, the reception full of people sharing stories about her generosity and wit. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. I expected nothing. Maybe a small keepsake, a piece of jewelry, something sentimental. Grandma Ruth had money, everyone knew that. A paid-off house in a good neighborhood, decades of careful investments, a late husband's pension. My father was her only child. The money would go to him, then eventually trickle down to me and Mark. The attorney's office was downtown, on the 14th floor, with a wall of windows overlooking the city. My parents sat on one side of the conference table, Mark and I on the other. The attorney, Mr. Phillips, was probably 60, gray-haired and serious. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Ruth's estate is straightforward, and she left very clear instructions. She also left a letter explaining her decisions, which I'll read first." He opened a sealed envelope and unfolded a single sheet of paper in my grandmother's handwriting. "To my family," he read, "I've thought carefully about how to distribute my assets. For most of my life, I planned to leave everything to my son David, trusting he'd use it wisely and provide for his children. But in the last years of my life, I witnessed something that changed my mind. I watched David and his wife dismiss their daughter's serious medical concerns. I watched them turn away an ambulance while Jessica was dying. I watched them laugh it off afterward, minimize it, refuse to acknowledge their mistake. And I realized that people who cannot see their own child clearly, who cannot admit when they're wrong, who value their pride over their daughter's life, cannot be trusted with my legacy. Therefore, I leave the bulk of my estate to Jessica, who survived not because of her parents but despite them." The silence in the room was absolute. Mr. Phillips continued reading the will's specifics. The house, valued at $900,000. Investment accounts totaling $1.6 million. Savings bonds, retirement accounts, personal property, all to me. My father received $25,000 and Grandma's wedding china. The letter specified that this token amount was intentional, a statement rather than an oversight. Mom's face went through several colors: red, white, purple. Dad just stared at the table. "This isn't legal," Mom finally said. She wasn't in her right mind. "Mrs. Morrison, I assure you the will is completely legal. Ruth was evaluated by 2 physicians prior to making these changes. She was of sound mind and clear intent. There's also a no contest clause. If you challenge the will, you forfeit even the $25,000. "When did she change it?" Dad asked, his voice hollow. 16 months ago, shortly after Jessica's hospitalization. We filed out of the office in silence. My parents didn't speak to me, didn't look at me. They got in their car and drove away. Mark hugged me in the parking garage. "Grandma made the right call," he said. "I'm glad she did it." The inheritance changed my life in practical ways. I paid off student loans, bought a reliable car, and moved to a better apartment. I set up investment accounts, met with financial advisors, and learned to manage money I'd never expected to have. But the real change was internal: security, independence, the knowledge that someone had seen me clearly and chosen to believe me, to protect me, to acknowledge what my parents never would. My parents didn't contact me for 6 months. Then Dad called. "We need to talk about finances," he said without preamble. "Okay. Your mother and I are having some difficulties. The mortgage is behind. We've got credit card debt we didn't realize had gotten so high. We were counting on your grandmother's money to handle retirement planning." "I see. We need help, just temporarily. Maybe $5,000 to catch up on bills?" "No." Silence. Then, "No. I'm not giving you money. Jessica, we're your parents. That money should have been ours. Your grandmother was my mother. And you were fine with her dying daughter. She noticed. She made her choice. That's not fair. We didn't know you were really sick. You stopped an ambulance. You laughed about it afterward. Mom told her friends at the funeral reception that I'd been overdramatic about a little heart flutter. More silence. We made a mistake, Dad said finally, but we're family. You can't just abandon us. I didn't abandon anyone. I almost died on your dining room floor, and you told paramedics I was attention-seeking. Grandma saw that. She decided who deserved her legacy. So you're going to let us lose our house? You're going to let you lose your house. Your financial planning isn't my responsibility. He hung up. Mom called an hour later, crying, begging. Then Dad again, angry. Then both of them together, alternating between guilt trips and demands. The calls kept coming. Every few weeks, a new crisis. The mortgage was foreclosing. The car needed repairs they couldn't afford. Medical bills were piling up. They needed $3,000 a month just for basics, just until they got back on their feet. Each time, I said no. You have millions, Mom said during one call. You don't even need it all. We're asking for crumbs. Crumbs, I repeated, like the attention I was supposedly seeking when my heart stopped. Why can't you let that go? It was an honest mistake. Because you've never admitted it was a mistake. You've never apologized. You've never acknowledged that your dismissiveness almost killed me. You want my help now, but you couldn't be bothered to help me when I was dying. So this is punishment? No. This is a boundary. Grandma left me this money because she knew I needed protection from you. She was right. The calls became less frequent. I heard through Mark that they downsized, sold the house, moved to a smaller place. That they were managing but bitter. That they told people their daughter had stolen their inheritance. I didn't correct the narrative. Didn't defend myself to distant relatives or family friends. The people who mattered knew the truth. I kept Grandma's letter framed on my wall. I read it sometimes when the guilt crept in, when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. People who cannot see their own child clearly cannot be trusted with my legacy. She'd seen everything clearly. The pattern of dismissal that had defined my childhood. The cardiac arrest that had crystallized it. The fundamental inability of my parents to put me before their own pride. And she'd acted. Quietly, legally, definitively. My heart condition is managed now. Regular checkups, careful monitoring, medication that keeps the electrical pathways behaving. I live a normal life. Work full-time at a job I enjoy. Have friends, hobbies, plans for the future. I live this life in Grandma's house, the one she left me. I painted the walls, updated the kitchen, made it mine while keeping pieces of her everywhere. Her garden still blooms each spring. Her books still line the shelves. My parents have never seen it. They call sometimes still, less often now, still asking for help, monthly allowances, just a little support to make things easier. I think about the ambulance sometimes, about my mother's voice at the door, bright and dismissive, sending away the people who could save me. About my father's silence, his constant, enabling silence. About dying on their floor while they prioritized their perception of me over the reality of my body shutting down. Some things can't be forgiven, not because I'm holding a grudge, but because they require acknowledgement that never comes. An apology that never arrives. An understanding that remains forever out of reach. Grandma Ruth understood that. She didn't leave me the money out of anger. She left it out of protection, out of recognition that some people will never see you clearly, and the best gift you can give someone is the means to build a life beyond their blindness. So I built it. This life, this home, this security. And when my parents call asking for allowances, asking for help, asking for the money they believe they deserve, I think about Grandma's letter. And I say no. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of the simple truth that the woman who stopped an ambulance while I was dying doesn't get to profit from the grandmother who noticed.